Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Hello Again. It's a very special week this week because I'm joined by not one but two amazing authors, Caroline Corcoran and Nicola Rayner. Thank you both so much for coming and spending this time with me, my little abode.
Thank you
How are
so
you
much
both?
for having us on.
Oh no, the pleasure is all mine. I usually start things off by having you introduce yourselves and just telling us a little bit about the kind of books that you write. So do you want to go first, Nicola?
Well, my name's Nicola Rayner. I am a psychological suspense writer. Last year, my debut came out, The Girl Before You, with Avon Books. And at the moment, as we're speaking, my second novel, You and Me, is coming out on Thursday, on the 1st of October.
Very exciting.
Yes, I can't wait.
So it will be 2 days ago that that's come out.
So it will be, yes. So 2 days ago.
So you can get it.
my second book, You and Me, came out, which is another psychological suspense novel as well. I don't know how much you want me to say about it now, or should we go into that later?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about it in more detail, aren't we? So
yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. And Caroline?
Yes, I am Caroline Corcoran. Very similar trajectory to Nicola, really. My debut came out last year with Avon Books. It is psychological suspense, so we sit in the same genre, which is why it's great to do this event together. And my first book, Through the Wall, came out last year, and my second book, The Baby Group, came out a week and a half ago. Yes, so I am just in a post-publication day where really of being a bit obsessive about reviews and trying to make myself leave Amazon alone for an hour or two, and trying to calm down from the whole craziness of it. But yes, that's me, I think, in a nutshell.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because when you look at your numbers of sales and then you look at the sort of number of reviews on Amazon, it's like a drop in the ocean, isn't it? But you become really obsessed with them, and you're like, that's how I sort of I'm like, right, do people like this book or not? And that's the only place I go to find out. Like, it's so ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. It's so difficult to not get fixated on it. Absolutely. But
I have to be quite careful about looking. Actually, I don't let myself look too much, but partly actually because of that obsession, because I'm really wary of that obsession. I have to kind of pull myself back from it.
And rankings on Amazon rankings and what the minefield, isn't it?
Terrible. I think that's the worst day ever when you discover that, because I think I didn't know it existed, and then you're like, hold on, what is this? And then it's like a number to get obsessed with.
The sliding scale.
The different groups you might be appearing in as well, like the different
the
sections of exactly.
Anyway, I'm digressing. We won't fall into an Amazon hole. But the reason I wanted you to come on together, or the reason why you should be here together, is because there are lots of parallels, I think, in your new books. And we've got two characters, two central protagonists. We've got Scarlet and Fran, who become very isolated for very different reasons. And I wondered if you could both talk a bit about that and why you chose to tell those two stories.
Do you want to go first again, Nick? Should we stick to that order?
Okay, all right. So Fran is the central character, the protagonist in You and Me. She's a pretty lonely soul. She is very much holding a torch for Charles, who's someone she was at school with, who was a real golden boy at school. And she sort of lingers around the edges of his life. So she sort of turns up in his garden a bit with presents for him, but never actually knocks on the door. She turns up at his workplace again and sort of looks for him. But she doesn't really have much contact with him. A lot of it's in her head. The character actually has been with me for a really, really long time, more than 10 years. When I very first started exploring my creative writing, she turned up in a short story, in a fragment. And she was, you know how some characters you have to really, really work at? She wasn't one of those. She just arrived. She was so clear to me. Her voice was always really clear. The sense of her was always really, really clear. So I loved writing her. She's definitely quite strange, and she's definitely really, really lonely, as you say. And obviously loneliness and obsession and paranoia, they all work. I mean, they're all key parts of like suspense novels, but they all work really well together. So in order, loneliness, she sort of feeds her obsession for Charles, I would say. She lives alone in a flat in West London. She used to live there with her mum and her sister, but her mum has died, and she's estranged from her sister, and that estrangement happened while her sister was pregnant. So she doesn't ever see her sister or her niece, and she sort of follows them on Facebook, and her sister travels a lot, so she follows them around on the globe in her room, and she longs for them, and she longs to make up with her sister. So she's got a lot of this longing and loneliness, and she doesn't have many friends at the bookshop where she works. And because she has so much time, and because she is so lonely, I suppose that really fuels her obsession. Charles. And the novel opens with her, more or less in the first chapter, she's on a platform, a crowded tube platform, and she sees a terrible accident. She sees Charles's best friend die in slightly mysterious circumstances, and she thinks this is the opportunity, this is the thing that will bring her close together to Charles. This is the thing that's really going to bring them together after all these years. So that's how the novel starts. But then there are lots of sort of twists and turns along the way. But yeah, her loneliness is absolutely key to the novel. It's something I had to think about a lot.
That's such a powerful way to open as well, because most people in that scenario would obviously not react the way that she does, and see it as this kind of, ooh.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it is a little dark. It is a little dark, you know, and it is. I don't know. I have. I mean, mixed feelings about Fran, and I think hopefully the reader mixed feelings about her, because yeah, she is trying to take advantage of something, of a tragedy.
Yeah, but only because she's in such a bad place herself, and I think
it's true. Yeah,
it's a great way of showing the reader immediately. Oh, okay, this is what we're dealing with. This is not going to be run of the mill. It's great.
No,
she's a great character. She's such a fully formed character, and I loved you a bit, as you know, and I thought she was just so nuanced, and that exact thing that you're rooting for her, but then you're like, but that isn't really okay to do, but okay. And yeah, it's she is. I'm not surprised that she's been with you for so long, because she did feel very fully formed.
Thank you. It's funny, isn't it, how, as I say, some characters you do have to kind of chisel away a bit, and other characters are just like, ta-da, I'm here. I'd be really interested.
So I long for them.
Yeah, they're rare, aren't they? It doesn't
happen
that often, so you have to enjoy it when it does.
How about Scarlet?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting theme, isn't it? Loneliness, because the whole sort of, the darkest places in your own head. I think the lonelier you get in the real life, the more you do retreat then into that space in your own head. So I think it's probably a reason why we've both explored that in this genre. So for Scarlet, things are a bit different. She probably ostensibly lives in the real world a little bit more than Fran at the start of the novel, and she has quite a sort of a very full life, really, which is why what happens to her is then such a change, because gradually that life is sort of taken away from her at every turn. So what happens is that she the impetus and the main sort of driver for the novel is that when she goes back on her first day after maternity leave back to work, she finds that a shocking video has been sent to pretty much everybody she knows, and gradually that it takes away all of the best things about her life, really. It affects her marriage, her friendships, her work, everything, her family life, her relationship with her daughter, and she just retreats and retreats and retreats, so that so much then is going on inside her head, and she's becoming more paranoid, more angry, more scared, and I personally think that's just such a interesting thing to explore for a character. And I did it a lot with my first novel, with Through the Wall, as well, because
I think especially in 2020 and the way we're living now, that push-pull of the public and the private, and what goes on outside versus what goes on inside. I really like exploring that as a theme, and there's probably a reason it sort of crosses over in both of my books. So I think, yeah, for Scarlet, she's probably surrounded by people a little bit more than Fran is. But in a way, that's when her loneliness is exacerbated the most, I think, because she starts to feel as though she's playing a part, and that she isn't really living the life that she wants to live. But she retreats into that. I should go back to the book, so I've digressed a little bit. So when this happens to her with the video, the only people in her life that haven't been sent it are her relatively new friends, her NCT group, from when she was pregnant. And so she spends all of her time with them, basically. Their friendships are very fast, very intense, like friendships often are when you have newborn babies. And she spends all of her time with them. It's very, very intense, but very, very quickly, this isn't a spoiler, we realise that that one of them is involved in some way, and that actually the people that she's getting closer and closer to and putting sort of all of herself into as everything else moves away are actually the place where she should be feeling fearful, and the place where this destructive force of her life has come from.
So creepy.
I have to say, it's such an explosive and fantastic opening to a book.
Oh, thank you.
Just, you know, you're like kind of, I mean, I was just absolutely hooked. And also, like, this is a horror. It's like the worst thing you can imagine happening in your life. And just everybody, it's like the stuff of nightmares, but you do it so well. And
thank you. That's really nice. I felt exactly the same with the opening to You and Me, and it's so important, isn't it, that opening?
It's a bit you come back to, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think I was really fixated on, you know, does anybody watch Orange Is the New Black?
Yeah.
That opener of that is basically the first episode is that she so the whole series is her in prison, but the first episode is that something that she did years ago comes back to completely ruin her life now, and that by then she's a different person, really. It's a totally different version of her, barely any link really to this person that she used to be, and like a lot of us, you kind of reinvent yourself, you evolve, you move friendship groups, you change, you grow up. And I was really interested in exploring that idea of something from a kind of past life and a past version of you, affecting current you and this new life that you've built and kind of blowing it apart.
Definitely.
That's the main group, I think, in a nutshell.
And it's this sort of theme as well, isn't there, about the way we compare ourselves to other people, and especially I think women do that. I mean, maybe men do it in a different way to women, but I think we're sort of set up to fail almost, aren't we, by magazines or popular culture generally. You know, look how thin she is, look at how how handsome her husband is, look how many children she's got, where are your children? It's all this kind of thing all the time, isn't it, of us comparing ourselves basically. And I think I've certainly fallen into that trap before. And what we should be doing obviously is supporting each other, and I think publishing is a good example of where that really works, because I mean, female authors are the most supportive bunch, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I always wonder why we do that. And have you found yourself falling into that same trap? Because I'm in the position where I'm 40 now. A lot of my friends are having children, getting married, or, you know, have been doing that a few years ago, and I can't have children. So I'm not envious exactly, but I feel like I'm different to them, and that there's a point that we can't relate on. And it does strain some friendships, I suppose. You have to work extra hard. But yeah. Sorry, there's a question in there somewhere.
I think there's so much in there, isn't there? I mean, it's really interesting. I was thinking about female jealousy last night ahead of this, and I was thinking, why do we never really hear about male jealousy in the same way, do we? And of course, you know, men often and do experience jealousy, but it's not really talked about as a thing. I mean, I'm talking about the jealousy between men, I suppose, not as in men jealously guarding their girlfriends, you know, but that kind of thing. And it's interesting, purely by coincidence. I was listening to Gloria Steinem last night, catching up on her episode on How to Fail. And she was talking about how, essentially, how jealousy is often, you often find it almost sort of encouraged in groups where they don't have as much power. And of course, if women are being jealous of each other and competing against each other, we're kind of giving away our power, aren't we? And we're weakening ourselves, and not like instead of fighting against the patriarchy, but sort of, you know. And I wonder if that is why it's something that is almost encouraged in the media.
Yeah, this awful idea of having to compete for a man.
Exactly, or compete.
Like,
I don't know, this idea that there's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, be that whatever it is. I don't know. There's not enough in the writing community. Is that there's not enough success, or there's not enough success to go around, or there's not enough money to go around, or there's not enough. You know what I mean? That and there is enough, but we must be getting that idea from some. I reread Rebecca recently. I was talking about it on a different podcast, and that's a book from 1938, but it's a book entirely about female jealousy and a woman measuring herself up to another woman and feeling like she's not enough. So I mean, and you could go much further back than there. So this is something that's been around for a really, really long time, and it's something that we've all experienced, and it is something that's also encouraged, isn't it? It's a really strange, it's a really strange thing. And yet I would say women are so good at working together. I think women are amazing at working together and supporting each other, and as you say, you see that in the writing community all the time. So it's a strange, I don't know, duality of measuring us, which we all do, measuring ourselves up to other women and thinking we're not good enough, which is definitely something Fran does all the way through You and Me, and it's something that you see, you know, it's a huge theme in the baby group as well. And so measuring ourselves up to women, other women, and feeling like we're not enough, and yet we are so good at working together. And as you say, that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, when it's mobilized, it's incredible, isn't it? Nicola hooked me up with the psychological suspense authors association, and that's just been such a lovely, especially this year when we're all at home and there isn't that getting together and celebrating each other element of publishing books that usually happens in person. It's been such a lovely thing to join up and be part of. And like you say, when it happens, it's so incredible. I think I did a very rambly, drunken speech at my launch party for Through the Wall about it, because I just found it amazing. I'd moved out of London and quite far away before that book came out, and all these friends that I hadn't seen for a while and I'd been a bit rubbish at keeping in touch with were all just there championing it and shouting about it on their social media, and all women. I worked in women's magazines and most of my friends are women, and they were just all there being so supportive. It's a huge theme, isn't it? And it's such a huge theme in the baby group as well, and the same for Scarlet, and especially she so she is a mum blogger as well, and so she's always rating things in terms of how they appear on there as well and how her life looks. I personally hate social media. I really do. I use it for work only. If it wasn't for that, I would happily get rid of it all. And
me too.
I just think it's such a fuel for so much of that stuff. And I especially Instagram, like I feel like at least Twitter, there's debate and there's exterior subjects, whereas Instagram, that whole focus on the me and what my life looks like, I really struggle with it. And I think it's exactly what you said, Nicola, earlier about reviews. I think I'm the same. I think I know if I started posting my life, I would get so obsessed with it and competitive that I just can't go there. So I think it's a real dichotomy, isn't it? Because it's really, you really feel like that support is so strong, but then when it goes bad and when it is competitive and it is people putting their lives up against each other, it's just so unhealthy and horrible.
It's so bad for you. It's so bad for your mental health, and
so bad.
Like I always feel like because I'm a bit of I have got a bit of a thing for sugar, and I always feel like social media is a bit like sugar. It gives you that kind of pop, a high.
Oh yeah.
And there's always the crash afterwards.
Yeah.
You get that dopamine kind of kick when someone likes your thing or they say something nice. But then there's that, I can't get away with it without also having the crash at some stage. It might not come immediately, it might come later, but it's never, it's a double-edged sword. It's a very strange thing. And
yeah.
I agree with you, Caroline. I'm only on it for work, really. And I do like that it's connected me to other writers.
Yeah.
That is one nice thing, and I have met some people, or connected with some people that way. But no, generally it's say most of my nice social media interactions are kind of balanced out by something less pleasant.
Yeah, it's like we have a built-in compulsion though to sort of pull at that self-destructive thread where, you know, if you're feeling a bit low about yourself for whatever reason, it's almost like you go and seek out ways to feel even worse.
Yes.
Like when I'm worried about my book coming out in reception, I'm on NetGalley constantly, like just to see whatever. I'm like, even if it's bad, I'm like, 2 stars, I'm going to read to the end, even though I know it's going to feel awful. Like, what? It's so weird, isn't it?
It's so true. It's like scratching at a scab, isn't it? It's like looking at something that you know is, again, it's going to hurt, but you can't help but do it. And I'm sure we all have, you know, there are certain accounts that I should avoid, that when I'm feeling in a particular mood, I'm like, I'm going to go and see what so-and-so's up to. And I know that I will feel really bad when I see what so-and-so is up to, but in a certain mood, I will go, and it's like the equivalent of like reaching for a bottle of wine, you know.
It is, yeah.
It's exactly like you said with the sugar thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You go and make yourself feel even worse.
The problem is that it's because it's something we will never ever, this perfection that we will never, it doesn't. So in the baby group, so Scarlet, ostensibly her life does look pretty perfect. She's beautiful and she's a lovely husband, but that's kind of one of the points that I suppose it is trying to make, is that there's a lot of resentment and envy within her friendship group towards each other, of everybody thinking that everybody has it a lot easier and a lot better. And then when this thing happens to her, it kind of shows up a lot of these perfect elements of her life for what they are. But I think, that's the problem, that there's a level of perfection that we were never going to attain. So we're always going to be going for that hit and for that little bit more, little bit more, because
it's always grass is greener, isn't it? So if you're, for example, I don't know, like single and childless like me, I kind of look at my friends and families and think, I wish I had that. But they always say to me, well, you can just go off on holiday whenever you want, and you know, you've still got your figure, and it's that kind of like, you know, but I get the kids, but you get this, and it's this silly sort of game you play with yourself. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? You never have that sort of the perfect life. It doesn't exist.
We're not comparing like with like, are we? Because
no,
I'm comparing my, you know, I know what my life looks like, and I know all my insecurities, and I know all my problems. But I don't know, you know, and I think this is something you do really well in the baby group, Caroline, you know, but I don't know, when I'm looking at someone's Instagram square of a beautiful kind of almost like, you know, shot, like a photo shoot kind of version, you know, of, it's like whether it's their book in a bookshop, or whether it's, you know, their beautiful house, or their beautiful husband, or their beautiful, I'm not comparing, you know, I'm not comparing their messy Sunday evening with my messy Sunday evening. I'm comparing their kind of beautifully curated version of their life with my real version. So you're not even comparing real things.
No.
Comparing, you know, it's such a crazy game that we play, and it really fascinates me, because we all know this, don't we? Like we all know that everyone else's lives aren't perfect, you know. This is such a again, it's something that I think Caroline does really well in the baby group. We know that they're not, and yet we kind of fall into that trap of thinking that maybe this person you're looking at on social media doesn't have any problems, or that it is effortless for them, or that they never feel jealousy, whereas that's not true of any of us, and yet we still forget that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's weird. It's not new, is it? Like, we've had social media for a while now.
Yeah,
we all know that this isn't a revelation to us, and yet we still ignore that while we're clicking and convincing ourselves. It's really strange.
Yeah,
and really poisonous. I do think I had this conversation on a podcast last year about championing of other women, and how much
it's so much better to do it than to box yourself off and think they're a risk to me, that they've got a book out at the same time, so I'll put my pencil case and stack them up and keep all my stuff, keep all my ratings, and make sure that they don't get any sales. It just, apart from being really unpleasant, it also, I think, is actually really ineffective. I think it comes back to you tenfold if you put it out there and you support people and you shout about what they're doing and you champion them. It absolutely comes back
absolutely
you as that people have the goodwill back, and that's not the reason to do it. Obviously we should do it just because we want to and because we believe in the books, because we believe in the people, but I do find that it actually it does that anyway. It's win-win, I think, when we do that, and I think the opposite ends up making ourselves feel bad, but also shuts ourselves off then from finding that community and building it, and having it there then when we want it ourselves as well.
And readers don't just buy one book.
Exactly.
I remember there being like this whole big snobbery thing for ages about celebrity novels, like the sort of chick litty type fiction written by, or supposedly written by a name, which helps them obviously sell by the bucket load when they've actually been ghostwritten. And I used to say, well, because everybody be sort of looking down their noses, and I'm like, but if it gets people that don't read books into bookshops and reading again, then I'm all for it, because those same people are then going to go, oh, actually, I haven't read a book since school, but I love Vicky Patterson or whatever, so I'm going to go and read her novels, and then I'm going to go and buy all the other novels that she recommends or of a similar ilk. So you're not just going to stop at the one book, are you? You're just
exactly.
Anything that drives readers to books is a good thing. It can never be a bad thing.
Exactly. And especially with with Psych Suspense, I suppose, like Caroline was saying about the Psych Suspense Association, if a reader likes Psych Suspense, they're going to want to read lots of Psych Suspense books, aren't they? Not just
that made me rush, and that was an enjoyable thing I did, so now I want to go and do that again. And absolutely.
And actually the industry is set up to sell people multiple books at a time now, with the supermarket 2 for £8, buy one get one half price Waterstones, the 99p deals on ebook. They're encouraging people to go in and just sort of buy 6 or 7 titles at once. That's sort of regard, aren't they? That's why they have recommended reads. So I think it's definitely worth kind of keeping that in mind. I'm always really intrigued on Amazon to scroll down and be like, people that bought your book also bought.
Now
so random, isn't it?
Sometimes it's really random. And I think maybe it's because I rated that book in one of my social media posts, and it's come up as like being associated with me.
That's funny.
Or maybe it's just my phone listening to what I say.
Possibly.
I wanted to ask you both about because your books are they're both amazing at building that sort of tension and suspense, and keeping the reader on the edge of your seat. And I write slightly different type of fiction, sort of much quieter and more slow moving fiction. So I'm basically picking your brains into how you inject that pace and keep building that suspense without giving too much away. I don't know if you give me any tips.
Do you want to go?
I don't feel like, I won't take very long because I don't feel like I have a particularly satisfactory answer, but for me it mainly comes out in the rewriting. I'm not terribly, I know a lot of thriller writers who are very, very good planners and they plan every chapter, but that's not the case for me. I definitely, with You and Me, actually both my novels, I wrote a very long, very different first draft which had far less suspense in it.
That's interesting, because that was the same for Through the Wall for my first.
That's really interesting.
And then coming in, isn't it, going, actually let's give this a strong, let's make sure it's positioned very clearly and isn't something in between.
Exactly. I think it's nice to do. Personally, I like to do that because I think it's probably the way I'll go with my third book as well. And although it's not very time efficient, it would be a more efficient way to do it would be to plot out all the chapters, put all the suspense in early on, and then follow the plan. That's not really how I work. But by doing a long draft that kind of explores, it is more kind of rambling, is less tense, I get to explore the characters and the world, and fill in a lot of backstory that then doesn't make the final draft, and then go back and restructure it the second and third time around to make it more tense. So it's certainly certainly not something that's effortless for me, and I go about it in a very long-winded sort of rambling way, but I think that just happens to be the way I work. I'd love to be a planner, but I'm not.
So interesting, isn't it, the different ways people...
Yeah.
Right, so I kind of this is probably quite good, this is hopefully quite good for people watching then to sort of see different ways of doing it. So I am a bit of a planner. I loosely follow something called the Save the Cat beat sheet. Very loosely though, I should say, because so I do plot chapters, because I just found I tried to write books before the 2 that are actually published, and I just found I sort of ground to a halt if I didn't plan. So I use that, but it very much I'll then get to a point with it where I go, actually this would be happy, so then I come back and I slot things in, and what it ends up looking like is very much not the beat sheet model. But I also remember reading something, you know, and certain things just really stick with you. I remember reading something saying if you're a big reader, you also you'll naturally feel the rhythm of when you need a twist or a revelation, and when you need a bit of a kind of pow moment to ramp things up. And I really do feel like that comes in as well, and I'm sure it will feel, both of us are only on our second books, and I don't know about you, Nicola, but I still feel I'm very much learning this as well.
Absolutely.
You know, you read the real pros who've been doing this for so many books, and you go, oh, that's really how it's done with twists. And but I do feel like that the more I do it as well, that I am picking up on that rhythm and feeling it a bit more, of just when you get to a point and yourself, you've done a bit of backstory, you've been, and that if you were reading, you'd be thinking now, like,
exactly,
need something, and I'm chomping at the bit for something to just go, whoa, okay, I was going to go to sleep, but now I'm going to stay for the next chapter. So yeah, and my last note, when you sent these questions over at the weekend, I did a few notes. My last note was definitely, and if all else fails, your editor will tell you when when you need some pace, which definitely comes in. I don't know if this is maybe perhaps more of this in this genre, that maybe that sort of pacing, maybe editors do come in a little bit more, because I think it's such a crucial thing for these books. You don't have that, it's not going to be a success in this genre. Like, you have to have that pace and that attention, and if you don't, the book hasn't worked in a nutshell. So yeah, I think, you know, a good editor is obviously always going to push for more, and maybe for some more twists, and maybe for that pace to be spaced out a little bit differently than you did. But I've certainly found that hugely useful.
Absolutely.
On things as well.
Absolutely. It was quite strange. I don't know about you, but it was quite strange this time round for my editor to come in at such an early stage. Normally I wouldn't share a draft quite so early, or at least for my last novel I wouldn't have done, but because I was writing at such pace this time, my editor Tilda, the editor I was working with, saw a draft quite early, and she was, and I knew, you know, when you I mean, often of your manuscript anyway, but she was like, could have a little more jeopardy. And I went, oh, good point. It is a thriller after all. I was like, just give me 3 months. Like,
It's so different as well, isn't it? I mean, both of us being on our second books. Isabelle, you're obviously way further down the line with yours, but that first book,
it doesn't get easier.
Yeah,
how many have you done, Isabelle?
You're on what?
I'm on number 8.
Wow.
So
that's the other pro I was talking about.
I'm not at all, though. That's a joke. I think I have learned a lot. I think I learn what the way that I write and the mistakes that I make, so I can pull myself in quicker than I used to be able to. Whereas I'd write a whole book and it would all be wrong. And now I get to about 30,000. I'm like, no, this is wrong. I'm going to start again. So I'm getting better and better. I'm going to shrink that down to like 5,000 and be like, no, you're going off on a tangent.
Your first novel, you spend so long because there's no deadline, no one's waiting for it, is there? And you're just crafting and coming back to it and putting it away for a while and tinkering with it and adding stuff and taking stuff away, and it's such a long process. And then the second one, it's like, okay, we'll need this by this time. We're both on 2 book deals, I think, weren't we, Nicola? So so they're waiting for it, and you're like, oh, okay, and it's much more again, we're all former journalists, aren't we?
Yeah.
So you kind of, in a way, it's easier. You're used to deadlines, and you're used to somebody at the other end waiting for it, and in a way that's easier. But in a way it's obviously harder as well, because pressure to come up with, especially that pace and the twist and the to get all that in. So it does help that for some of it to slot in later at rewrites certainly helps as well.
At least we have clean copy edits though, because we can all write. And I think actually for me, because I was a sub-editor for years and years and years, I don't mind a brutal edit. Like I can take the criticism, I can take like whole swathes of copy just going in the bin and writing something. I'm not precious about my words at all. And I think that probably helps, because my structural edits are quite brutal, but my sort of line edits and copy edits are a breeze. So
I agree. I find, I mean, not to get into sort of too techie a chat, but I find line edits so much easier. On structural edits are such a beast of a job, aren't they? Just make your brain hurt. Whereas the working through very efficiently with line edits is
I enjoy it.
Or proofing as well. It just reminds me so much of magazine work, you know, and it had that kind of real satisfaction of having a sort of sharp pencil and being able to kind of yourself. I quite enjoy that aspect of it.
For those that don't know, proofread is what you do right at the end. You get sent a copy of your book as it will look, sort of printed on A4 but page size, and what you do is you go through and you mark by hand any mistakes that you make or that you spot, and they can be taken in very last minute. But I don't know about you two, but it's always a completely different reading experience when you read it like that as a physical book than you read it on Kindle or when you read it on screen.
You just see things that you didn't notice the first time around. It's really interesting. It laid out differently, and I always found this in magazines as well. Somehow reading something like that is very different from reading something on Word, isn't it? Always, and I know I'm not alone, to pick up on things that I missed. You know, I've read it sort of a million times before on a Word document, but it's not until it's laid out that you see certain things and pick up on things like, I don't know, repetitions or missing words or whatever it is.
I always find at least sort of 80 to 100 things in the proof, which is nuts, because I would have read it probably about 17 times by that point. And
like you say, we think we're quite, you know, we're
quite clean,
self-editing, and
I think it's just the speed at the end that always feels like a mad rush. So you're like, and there's a chapter actually in my most recent novel which I had to rewrite, and it is literal first draft. Like it was just like done, and it's barely been changed. And there's some chapters in there that have been rewritten about 17 times. This one is just, I always read it and I'm like, woo, that one was just straight out the bag.
Isn't it? It's funny how that happens. You do have, both my novels, there are passages that I just remember writing really quickly, and you know, there are moments, you know, times, aren't there, when you sort of get into the zone and there is a sort of magic to it and it happens very quickly, and you write something you're quite proud of. And not saying this happens very often, but like once in a while it happens, and it's this really magical thing, and then it's often these passages that you don't really have to change, and yet there are others that are kind of like getting blood out of a stone.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's quite often the more simple bits of the story that the reader will just read in a few seconds. You know, like a nice passage of a descriptive passage or something that you've literally agonized over for an hour trying to think of something that isn't cliche but doesn't sound too ham-fisted, and it washes through the reader and they're like, oh, that was nice, and they just carry on. That's what it's all about. I can't remember, as another writer said, that, you know, I was literally spent 3 months on these lines, but then I get a message from one reader saying that it made them cry and it makes it all worthwhile. I'm just like, 3 months. So we usually do a quick fire at the end, but as we're getting a bit tight on time, I'm conscious about the time, don't want to take up too much of your time, why don't we finish by you telling us what you're working on next? Is that possible, or is it top secret?
I can at the moment. I don't know where you're up to.
You go first then, and I'll
go first, and you have a quick mental check. So yes, very handily. I can talk about it now because I signed another book deal in lockdown.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much. So that was announced last week when the baby group came out. So yes, I am doing 2 more books with Avon. the first of which is out next autumn, and the second of which will be out the autumn after that. I can't even remember what year that is. Yeah, the first one, the title at the moment, there's always a chance it will change, but the title at the moment is The Missing Mother. And obviously book 4 is a bit more unknown, but yeah, they will be in the same genre. And obviously book 3 is fairly far along now, as we all know, timing wise works with books. You're kind of promoting one whilst writing the next one. So yes, I'm about 65,000 words into book 3 at the moment. And,
excellent.
I'm not in that flowy bit. I'm not in the just tumbling out. I'm in the real, just click on it as discussed, partly because I'm spending too much time on Amazon or just retweeting something else about the baby group, and I think my head's still a little
It's really hard to do both. It's really hard to do that social media thing and write, because they're such different things, aren't they? One of them is like sociable and the other one's very quiet and very reflective, and
they're all on your laptop. They're both on the same.
Yeah, both on your laptop. Exactly.
It's so easy to just go, just a quick check.
Yeah, and it's lethal, and sort of 20 minutes later you're scrolling, just going.
Yeah. Just check which number I'm at in the vigilante justice category. Or the really randomly, Irish writing when it's
the Missing Mother sounds like another one about motherhood, Caroline.
Well, yeah, I mean that does seem to be happening to Through the Wall was fertility, very much fertility driven, which is something I was going through at the time had just been through. I couldn't have written it when I was going through it with IVF, and then the baby group was newborns. So yeah, maybe it's I don't know. So I was talking to someone on a podcast the other day. I find that it works quite well for me to take a germ from something that's going on in my life, and then obviously take it pretty far away from anything that's happened with sex tapes and stalkers and things that luckily are not in my own life. But I do find it. I think we're very similar as well, Nicola. And we both, even though they're psych suspense, they're quite emotional books. And so I find something. I think I'd find if I wrote a book about something that was very, very removed from my life now, I'd find it hard to get that emotion in there. So yeah, much as the difficulty is people think you're writing memoir sometimes when you write anything close.
I like what you said in the acknowledgements about your baby group. Your actual you were saying they're not you. This is not.
Yeah. I think
I didn't fall into a group of psychotic.
Because I think sometimes you do have to say it, don't you? Especially when when you write about things that are a little bit close to your own life, you do want to spell it out.
Exactly. I had because there is obviously, because I think this happens with characters you really love. There is, and I've been told to not say this too many times, but there is quite a lot of me in Fran. She loves books. I'm trying to think. I suppose she's sort of based on a younger version of me. When I was single, perhaps, and looking back at relationships I couldn't quite let go of. That loneliness thing is universal. And I was thinking also it's not a version of me now, but a lot of her feelings to do with the loneliness that can come from childlessness, and certainly the estrangement she feels from her sister and from other women her age, was based on, I guess, around 2013, when I was basically when everyone I knew was pregnant. It was just that year. I suppose everyone probably has had years like that, like the year that all their friends get married. Actually, the year all my friends got married was 2012, and then the following year was the year that all my friends. And I was just a bit naive. I think I thought that some people would have babies and some people wouldn't, and there'd be a kind of balance. But in my case, with my sort of social group, that didn't end up happening. It was sort of, I was more or less the only one in lots and lots of groups, like my school friends or university group or whatever, and I think, although I'm not Fran, I think that sense of loneliness and isolation and being cut off from my heroes. I think that a lot of You and Me kind of feeds from that time and from that emotion. But what I really found really interesting about your book, Caroline, is that she's in Scarlet's in like the ideal situation with, you know, the husband and the house and the baby, and she's really lonely too. And it really made me pause for thought about, you know, at the time when I was going through 2013, seeing all my friends with small babies and thinking that they had it all sorted and they were having the time of their lives. I mean, not quite, but, you know, thinking they were having this amazing, you know, enjoying this amazing bond and this amazing time. And I look back at it now, and I wanted to thank you, because your book did make me think, they probably weren't as happy as I thought, and they were lonely too. And then that made me feel sad. I was like, this is, you know, they were, you know, probably feeling lonely, and I was feeling lonely. And it's that bridge, or that kind of gap or rift between women, when I would so like to go back and kind of close that a bit. Talk to them about it now, you know.
I think it's our 30s, I think, as well. It's such a divergent time, isn't it? And it's such a formative time. And I kind of explored this quite a lot in Through the Wall as well, but the baby group does it as well. And those friendships, and us all being in different places, and everyone coming at things from their own, going through something difficult themselves. And often that is around children, whether you have them, whether you don't have them, whether you want them, whether you don't want them, or you can't have them, or have them and are finding it difficult, or whatever that kind of dynamic is. I think there's so much within all of that to kind of wrestle out, isn't there? And it's a really interesting subject. I've certainly enjoyed exploring it, and I think there's so much to say.
It is really rich. And it's going to be interesting seeing your through your books as you go through them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for what comes next. Right, okay, I think we've sort of reached a natural end. I feel like I could keep talking to you ladies all day.
It's a really interesting.
I have a book.
It's a very natural. It's just a very natural fit, isn't it? And I know we both really enjoyed. We both read each other's books quite early, didn't we, as well? And it's been a while ago now, and I'm terrible for forgetting books, but You and Me has stuck with me so much because because Fran is such a brilliant, like I say, fully formed character, but B, I think because of that opener, like you say, those really strong openers do just go whoa and implant themselves in your brain.
Thank
and it's great. So good luck with Education Day next week.
Thank you so much.
Supporting all the things that we should be.
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone watching, please go and buy a copy of these ladies' wonderful books, The Baby Group and You and Me, both of which are out now, available at all good book retailers and e-tailers and all the rest of it. And give them a follow on social media as well. Even though you both hate it.
Use it
to tell them you love your book. They will appreciate.
We are both quite cheerful on it though. I wouldn't say we're both really like.
Yeah.
Here I am again.
Grouchy presence.
Most importantly, leave an Amazon review, a good one, please. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been an absolute joy. No, my pleasure. You'll have to come back for the next book.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much. And for everyone else, come back next week for more Hello Again action with more amazing authors. And thank you for watching.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.